Now, more than 50 new deaths are being reported in Syria today as the brutal government crackdown continues. Despite a UN resolution passed yesterday calling for an end to the violence, more than a dozen of the deaths occurred in the city of Homs, which has now suffered 14 straight days of shelling by government forces. CNN's Arwa Damon managed to get inside the besieged city. What she saw is very disturbing.
It's very difficult to actually get around. There's only certain roads that we can take because of sniper positions, and in some parts drivers really have to gun it to get across to avoid being targeted.
The streets are mostly deserted. The majority of residents are staying indoors or have already fled.
Just the constant sound of gunfire nonstop. They used to bury the dead in the old graveyard over there, but once government forces came in, they stopped being able to do that. And this again is another position where we can't actually move out into the road because once again you're exposed to sniper positions that are just around the corner on the other side of those buildings.
We come across some members of the Free Syrian Army who take us around.
This is another spot that apparently you can also see the government tank positions from. If you look up here through this hole in the wall, just to the right, up against the wall of the building, you can see one of the tank positions that they have set up. This room that we're taking the video from, just take a look at it. There's a baby's crib right next to the bed, a Winnie the Pooh bag hanging off of the side of it. In a lot of these homes, it looks as if the families just fled in a panic. Shoes have been left behind, and obviously there were children who were living here. One can only imagine what took place because this building also was hit in one of the strikes. The personal belongings are all still inside. We're going through this hole in the wall right now because it's safer. These types of holes were dug into various walls inside the neighborhoods, we're being told, by the Free Syrian Army. And this was how they were getting families out because there was so much firing from the front end. They weren't able to evacuate that way, so they were forced to come out like this to get to relative safety.
And when residents are finally able to come back home, this is what they're going to return to. Arwa Damon, CNN, Homs, Syria.
The crackdown has spawned a growing humanitarian crisis and desperate cries for help that so far are going unanswered. CNN Pentagon correspondent Barbara Starr takes a closer look at the options.
For Syrians now being used as human shields, suffering from the violence, short of water, food and medicine, help is not on the way, at least not anytime soon. Private relief organizations are already hearing horror stories from Syrians on the run.
That it's very difficult to cross the border because it's continuously shelled and it's mined in parts. The people we've talked to have rather terrible stories to recount. One lady just told us that she had her son disappeared 2 weeks ago.
With no international agreement about what to do and no sign the regime will stop its attacks, talk of sending aid into Syria remains stalled in every direction you look on the map.
We are talking on diplomatic and humanitarian steps to be taken, but for other scenarios we hope that those things will not be needed, but we need to think about contingencies as well.
Humanitarian relief corridors from Turkey may be the most politically likely, but only if the conflict dies down enough to get aid in.
It's a tough piece of ground, and it's not a major line of communication. There are no major roads and railway networks there. It's a relatively isolated area.
Wesley Clark, a former NATO commander, warns a political settlement comes first. Without it, tens of thousands of Syrians could try to get out through Turkey, and with massive amounts of aid trying to get in, it all becomes a target for Syrian forces.
It's easier to talk about this than it is for Turkey to do it.
Other geographic avenues for aid trucked in and refugees getting out are all difficult. Already, some Syrians are crossing into northern Lebanon and into Jordan. Iraq is another option, but pressure from Iran, which supports Assad's regime, could hinder all of this. Clark suggests another option, bringing aid into Syrian ports closer to the people who need it. But without an agreement from Syria, it could all be disastrous.
We're not going to have that level of cooperation from the Syrian military.
And that is the problem, Candy. As long as the violence continues, there's going to be very little action on any type of humanitarian relief corridor, safe haven, any type of help for the people trapped inside Syria. Candy?
Barbara Starr at the Pentagon, awful to watch, really frustrating to not be able to get any kind of help in there. Thank you so much today.